CUNY put together, actually it's a revised policy for academic integrity. So this is relevant to this discussion because some AI parts have been added to this policy. And so what I have here is actually a page on the Center for Online Learning's website. We have a text that is quoted verbatim from the CUNY academic policy, and actually that policy lives here on the CUNY side, and it looks like this. But on the Hunter side, what we chose to do was to highlight the parts about AI in purple so that it's a little bit more obvious and easy to read. First, I am actually going to scroll down to the end of the page because I want to talk a little bit about why this was revised. They do have an explanation, and here it is. Okay, so it says that the policy was revised because the current policy does not address the advent of AI and is used by students at CUNY. So preparing students to learn from and use AI responsibly and ethically is critical to the university's mission to ensuring academic integrity, to securing the rigor of the university's academic programs. Further, students must become facile with the use of AI to learn effectively in today's world and to prepare for the AI-assisted careers and lives in the future. I chose to read that because I think it's very important, even though it is offered just as an explanation and that comes at the end of the policy. I think that is important information for professors to consider. And so now let me scroll back up the page, and I hope not to make you too dizzy, and highlight the parts about the policy relevant to AI. Okay, so the policy starts with definitions, and this is the definition of cheating. And so what they did was to add AI to the definition, and they say that copying from another person or from a generative AI system, or allowing others to copy work submitted for credit or a grade, that is considered cheating. Okay, and then they go into a little bit more of the explanation. And then I also want to highlight this last sentence. It says, any use of generative AI tools must be in line with the usage policy for specific assignments as defined in the course of the syllabus and or communicated by the course instructor. So here the policy is actually asking the professor is being respectful of what the professor decides to do in class. Okay, so this is important to point out. And then in the next area, it says using artificial intelligence tools to generate content for assignments or exams without the written consent or authorization from the instructor. Here again, it's allowing the instructor to tell the students what is allowed and what is not allowed to do in a classroom. Okay, so it's actually letting the professors decide and letting the professors tell the students. And then the last piece here is submitting content without proper citation is also considered a type of cheating. Okay, so then I'm going to scroll down a little bit more, and there are also two more pieces related to plagiarism. Okay, and it has to do with using AI tools to generate either words or images. And so this is also important that it's not just words, but it's also images without quotation marks or citations attributing the words to their source. That's considered plagiarism. And then the last piece here, unauthorized use of AI-generated content, whether in whole or in part, even when paraphrased without citing AI as a source. So citation is really, really important. Okay, so these are the pieces about this revised policy, CUNY revised policy. Again, the actual text lives here. Okay, we just made a copy of it and highlighted some sections in purple. I am going to stop here and pass the mic to Sissel, who's our next speaker. Sissel, you have muted yourself, so we're not hearing you.
Oh, so sorry. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Excellent, excellent. I'm Sissel McCarthy, the director of the journalism program in the Film and Media Studies department, and I'm delighted to be here to share my experience with AI in the classroom and also to hear about yours and your plans for the semester. So today I'll briefly tell you about how we tackled AI in my Media 211 course, which is News Literacy in a Digital Age, which satisfies the English 2 requirement. So it's an intensive writing course in which we do a reflective essay, an analytical essay, a research paper, and a team presentation. It is a hybrid course, so the lectures are asynchronous, but then we have 10 lab sections where we meet in person with students. Next slide, please. So today I want to cover my classroom policy for this course, some AI-proof assignments that have worked well for this kind of writing course, the 2 AI in-class exercises that I'm going to do this semester, how to spot and handle AI cheating, and if we have time, the ethical use of AI in the classroom in another course that we're teaching. Next slide, please. All right, so I want to share with you the language that I've included in my fall syllabus on the use of AI tools. I want to do a better job this semester of explaining what's allowed and what isn't allowed with students, beginning with my syllabus. So this is what I've come up with, and I'm just going to read it for you. And if anyone would like this, I'm happy to share it with you. Integrity and credibility are the pillars of journalism and fundamental principles throughout this course. All our assignments are designed to help you hone your expository writing and critical thinking skills, 2 essential learning outcomes that will prepare you for a competitive workplace, whatever your career. Therefore, all assignments submitted in this class must be your own original work and written by you alone. Copying and pasting from the internet or another student's work without attributing the source is plagiarism, whether intentional or not. While you may use AI tools like Grammarly for feedback on how to improve your writing, using any AI tools to write your assignments is strictly prohibited and will be treated as plagiarism. And if you can click, Julie, this is the important part. Anyone presenting someone else's writing as their own, whether from another student, the internet, or any AI tool generating text that is copied into your work, will receive a 0 for the assignment and will be reported to the Office of Student Conduct. So what I'm hoping, to get across is that writing is really thinking. And the point of learning how to write is not for a good grade, not even for a good essay, but to develop those critical thinking skills. And hopefully this dovetails nicely with CUNY's new policy and makes my expectations clear to the students. All right, next slide. I've also done some research on what kinds of assignments incentivize students to do their own thinking and writing. So essays in which students have to write about personal experiences and reflect on that experience work really well. Assignments that are contextualized, and by this I mean embedding key course concepts in the assignments that make them more relatable and useful, also work well. Assignments about real-world issues and current events, also good. And in-class writing assignments, going back to doing it in class, also a good idea. And metacognitive assignments that reflect their own learning process also work well. And then this fall, we are trying something new. We're having all our students write and submit their assignments in a Google Doc folder that we create for them at the beginning of the semester. So you may wonder, why would we do this? Well, because we can see the revision history then. So if an essay is just copy and pasted into the Google Doc in one fell swoop, we will know that. And we did pilot this in the spring, and it did work well because that section, in the sense that that section did not have any AI academic dishonesty violations. And unfortunately, we did have them in the other sections. So with that in mind, next slide, please. Here is what we're going to be doing for the fall. Number 1, and I do highly recommend this, do a first day in class writing exercise. It can be 5 minutes. We're looking for students to write about 150 words. It must be finished in class, and we want them to write about anything they want us to know, their professor to know for the semester. And this is important because it serves as a baseline for their writing. Next, we do a reflective essay about a 48-hour news blackout, which requires students to relate detailed personal experiences and what they learned from them to our week 1 course concepts. And it's about a 400-word essay. Next, we have 2 close textual analysis essays in which students actually take a news article, a current news article, and they analyze it and to determine its credibility. And they have to integrate 4 reading quotes from our syllabus, readings from our syllabus, to show that they are synthesizing all the material that we're actually teaching them. Then next we have a team presentation. That's going to be about a current conspiracy theories. We have 4 teams, and they each will take turns to do a 3 to 4 minute presentation about some aspect of that conspiracy theory. We also have a short essay on the midterm exam, and then a final blog post on their journey to becoming a more literate news consumer. So all of these assignments are actually quite hard for AI to write, because obviously it hasn't had these experience, it hasn't taken our course, it hasn't done our readings. So, you know, not to say it's foolproof, because we still do get AI cases, but once I changed these assignments in this way, we had fewer cases. All right, next slide. Here are 2 exercises that I'm planning to do in class this semester. The first one is related to that reflective essay on the 48-hour news blackout. And I have students look at 2 essays. Actually, we can go ahead. One more slide. Yes, there are going to be 2 exercises, one looking at this essay and then one about getting feedback. So here are the 2 essays side by side, and I have students read both and then work in teams to actually analyze the essays, looking at the writing, the organization, the overall message, and also how well it relates to the concepts that they already learned. If you click, you can sort of see the first paragraphs. This, you know, is designed to show them the disadvantages to using ChatGPT or AI to write this kind of essay, because the ChatGPT essay doesn't have any personal anecdotes. It doesn't relate to our takeaways, and it would fail the assignment because of that. Then we have them feed that AI version of the essay into ChatGPT using this prompt. And I actually asked ChatGPT, what's the best prompt for feedback on an essay without having it rewritten, right? Because that would violate our rules. So it said, can you provide feedback on my essay, focusing on areas such as clarity, coherence, argument, strength, and any areas where I could improve my analysis or presentation. Please don't rewrite any part of the essay. Just give me suggestions and identify potential weaknesses or areas for improvement. So this is what it came up with when I did this. Next slide. And I'll be honest, this is very good feedback. Some of it sounds very much like what I would give my students. So hopefully this will show students one advantage, one way they can use AI ethically and responsibly in a writing course. Okay, next slide. Well, one of the challenges for me and other professors teaching this course is how to spot AI generated text. We don't use detectors because of the high false positives. So we really have become AI detectives. And here are some of my tips. First of all, look at the quotes. AI is known for hallucinating quotes all the time. In fact, we check the quotes now before we even grade the essay, because that is the quickest way to determine that the student has possibly used AI. Writing style that is inconsistent with other work. If it doesn't sound like the student, that is definitely a red flag. If it's too perfect, right? That means no grammar mistakes, no spelling mistakes, word choice problems, all the things that you normally see with undergraduate writing. If it's too generic, well, that means, you know, that they're not using the course concepts, the vocabulary, you know, the things that you've really taught in your class. You should also be aware of that. Off-topic content, you know, arguments that really might make sense, but they're not what you were focused on in your class. That's another little red flag. And lists and bullet points. ChatGPT especially loves giving multiple reasons that are often numbered. And that's could be another sign. Next slide. Now, If you suspect unauthorized AI use, first and foremost, listen to your gut, as I now call it my AI radar. If you think it doesn't sound like a student voice, you're probably right, and you should investigate further. So the first thing that I do is compare that passage to their 5-minute writing exercise or any other writing that they've done in the class. Then this semester, I will be able to look at their draft history because we'll have that Google Doc folder set up. And I'll look to see if they did work on it over time or it just, landed in that doc in one fell swoop. Reach out to a colleague for their opinion. I always ask other people teaching the course with me what they think. If they think it sounds like AI or a student. You can also put your assignment in ChatGPT to see how it responds. This has been actually very powerful evidence when I show this to a student. Here's what AI said, and here's what you said. And the first 3 things you said are exactly the same with a lot of the same wording. So unfortunately, they literally do copy and paste it right into some assignments. And meet with the student and ask questions. So I think it's always important to meet in person with the student and ask them how they approached the assignment, what they were trying to say, in the passage that you're concerned about, what the language they used means, what inspired them to choose that angle. I mean, a lot of times, if they didn't write it themselves, those are very hard questions to answer. And often this is when they'll admit to using AI. But if they don't, then I will follow up with, I noticed in this writing assignment that, there's a significant improvement in your writing or a very different style from your previous work, which led me to wonder if you used any AI tools to help you. And then they will also often explain what happened at that point. Okay, I have a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to be able to get into this slide. So this is actually where we are going to be using AI. We already started using it last semester. We're going to use it more extensively this semester. It's a course called From Classroom to Career, and it's where we help journalism students get ready for job interviews or internship interviews. And so far, students have been using it for what you'd expect: company research and first draft of cover letters. Now this semester, we are going to do even more. If you can go ahead and click. So we got this idea from Harvard Business School white paper. It's called AI Exercises to Help Your Students Get Hired. So not our idea, but perfect for our course. So now we're going to be using AI to research company culture. So intel on company culture, as you can imagine, is all over the internet. And a prompt like, what kind of culture should I expect if I join the New York Times? I did this, and it generated things like a collaborative but competitive environment that is high pressured and fast paced. So that can be very helpful for students to determine how to present themselves, right? If, what type of person is going to be successful in that environment. We're also going to be using it to unpack job descriptions. That means taking the language used in the posting and asking AI what personality traits would be associated with them. And finally, we'll be using them to prepare interview questions and responses and then critique those interview questions. Recruiters are using AI for questions, so why not have students use it as well and use it to critique their responses? And this was a whole study done by Harvard and was, very helpful and very successful in preparing students for the job market. So that's it. Even 1 minute to spare. And now I will toss it to Christopher Hartley.
Hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Hartley. I'm the director of the Silberman Writing Program. I have a little bit of a different take today on AI. I thought it'd be interesting and informative to look at student reactions to this technology. I think we're all thinking about how, as instructors, we are looking at the technology, and I thought it would be interesting to see what the student perspective was. So during a recent workshop I had for an incoming graduate cohort, I asked the following questions, and that was, what is your awareness of AI? How have you or others used this technology? And do you have any fears or anxieties concerning AI? Now, although this group represented only a small selection of students, I do think their responses can help inform our own approaches to AI and give us some things to think about that are perhaps not the ones we were typically entertaining when we thought about this technology. So even with all the focus on generative AI since ChatGPT hit the scene in November 2022, a quarter of the respondents were completely unaware of the technology. They said that when I asked them about it during the workshop, it was the first time they'd even heard of it, which I know we think, well, how could that possibly be? And yet, it is really managing to fly under the radar for quite a few people. Another quarter of the respondents were vaguely aware of AI, but they were very uncertain of its capabilities. They might have heard about its use to do deep fakes or to create images, but they did not know that it could be used for writing or editing. And only half described themselves as very aware of the technology, though if they seem to be in that group, they seem to have not only be aware of its capabilities, but to have some experience using it as well. I think one conclusion that we can draw from this, especially for instructors who want to incorporate AI into their assignments, is that we shouldn't assume a level of comfort or familiarity with the technology on the part of students. I think we often think that students are going to be more knowledgeable sometimes of technology than we are, and I think this shows, well, I think because instructors have been so concerned about what this might mean for their classroom, that they've done a lot more reading and thinking about AI than their students have. Now, of course, this situation is bound to change as more and more people are exposed to generative AI and its various functions. But in these still very early days, I think it's important to proceed slowly, making sure that none of our students feel left behind and not just assuming a comfort of familiarity from the very beginning. Now, in terms of students who had used this technology to this point, the following uses were noted. A lot of students said they used it for brainstorming, and whether that was brainstorming to create social media content, or to come up with ideas for their essays, or to help sort of generate topics. Another one was writing their drafts, and this was not just a little bit here and there. This was, hey, here's my idea, please write this draft for me. Another one was editing their writing, and of course that also covered a broad spectrum of uses. Others talked about organizing their thoughts and information. Some talked about creating resumes, which is very close to what Sissel was talking about, using them to also create cover letters. And then last but not least was drafting personal statements, and that was for admission to the graduate program they were now in. Many of them had also used that technology through its incorporation into the software program Grammarly. And these uses include having Grammarly fix their grammar and punctuation for them, and in some cases allowing the technology to rewrite or reorder entire sections of their writing. There is a lot of concern on the part of students that I have seen in terms of using programs like Grammarly or Grammarly itself, whether that is skirting the line or whether that's crossing any sort of boundaries. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Now, although many of these uses by students do fall within the acceptable boundaries that were established by this new CUNY AI policy, others are on the borderline, and then others would run afoul of this policy. The students said that they use this to write entire essays or to write personal statements, which I found that particularly concerning because, of course, the personal statements and things like that are one of the metrics by which we assess students and their suitability for admission into a program. And I think it's concerning if these things are being done in a way that we are no longer looking at the student, but at the student's use of technology. And these findings do suggest that instructors need to review these rules closely with their students, making clear what is and is not appropriate for both their particular class and for academic work overall. I think Julie pointed out in the chat that the mandatory wording on all syllabi already mentions CUNY's academic integrity policy and directs students to it. But I do think it's a good idea that professors go further than that at the beginning of the semester, and that they specifically review the uses of AI that would be prohibited for their particular classroom or for academic work overall, and the ones that would be allowed. I think it's going to be enough of an important thing to, and there's enough confusion around it, I think that it is very important that AI is specifically addressed from the very beginning. Now, this is my favorite part. This is what worried you about AI, and these were some of the concerns expressed by students. I did not include my favorite, which was, well, we all have seen the Terminator. I didn't put that one in there, but I did think that was a pretty good one. One student said, I don't like to look at AI content because information gets stuck in your head and you may still add the info without meaning to really do it. And I think that's something that students sometimes run afoul of in using traditional resources as well. I think that using AI for work compromises the integrity and originality of the work. Concerned about my privacy, concerned about being replaced by robots. And I think that was less a Terminator-esque thing than the idea of jobs disappearing due to the use of AI. I think it can be misused, worried that people will lose skill or opportunities to challenge themselves. Getting too invasive. AI is being offered on a lot of platforms now, and I think we've all seen the really everyone jumping on the bandwagon to incorporate AI into everything. I saw something the other day about incorporating AI technology into a refrigerator. And I thought, well, okay, that's an interesting use. I don't want to accidentally use and there be an issue with any papers I write. And that was something that a lot of students expressed during the workshop, but also I've seen since the incorporation of this technology was students really being worried about using programs like Grammarly, about using AI in any way, because they're worried that it's going to leave some sort of trace that is detectable, that they are no longer going to be aware of whether they're cheating or not. And they just don't know. And they're looking for a lot of guidance. I worry about young people not learning how to write and the critical thinking skills that come with the writing process. And I think some of us have concerns around that when we allow the computer to do some of this brainstorming work, to do some of this critical thinking work, that skill will then atrophy for the students themselves. Relying on it eventually becomes the machine doing the work and you supervising it, doing it. It's not you doing it anymore. And again, that's certainly a concern. And then it takes the mental work and thought process away. So these were all the concerns that students had mentioned that I thought were applicable to this. And I think the loss or erosion of critical skills is, of course, a very real concern for students and should be an area of concern for educators. And but I think another critical issue brought up by these concerns is whether or not instructors should require the use of AI for certain assignments. Now, certainly where it is apropos to that particular course, when it makes sense, there wouldn't be this. But if a significant number of students are uncomfortable with the technology and its impact, is it ethical to require its use when it's not a necessary part of the class? And what I mean by that is if you insist that students use it to, say, generate ideas for a first draft or to brainstorm, and they are more comfortable doing that work themselves, and they want to work on that and they want to work on that skill and they want to develop that muscle, I think it might be, we should be aware that students are uncomfortable using it. And so I think it's all about talking with them about it early on and getting a sense of where those lines are. So that was my little bit. And thank you so much for your attention today.
Thank you so much, Christopher. And we are doing so great on time, so let me not mess this up. So I will, before we go into the Q&A, very briefly share with you how I developed, together with the students of my Italian translation class, an AI policy. So that's really to Christopher's points. Yes, the CUNY policy and the Hunter policy is there, but how do you have that conversation with the students? So this is how I did it in the fall of 2023. I spread it out over 3 classes. That is not necessary, but what I would definitely strongly recommend is to connect this as much as possible to the course content, the learning goals, and the skills that are the focus of your course, and to not do this on day 1 and say, hi, students, without any context. We've just done intros. Let's now come up with an AI policy together, okay? This is also a class where I have never pretended the internet didn't exist. With that, I mean that I've been teaching the Italian translation class for several years now. I've always integrated online dictionaries, Google Translate, because I wanted students to be using these tools in a smart and responsible way, and really integrating in the teaching of the course. And so what fall 2023 posed me was that new challenge of where do the AI tools come into that conversation. So I'll just briefly walk you through the 3 assignments we did. So it all started from this weather report, a passage that I took from a website, an Italian website, the weather somewhere in the north. I've been using this as a diagnostic for many classes. And what I have highlighted in yellow are some translation challenges. The students don't see this, but it's like a well-chosen passage. There are some kind of difficulties in there that I actually want to teach students how to solve over the course of the semester. So this is how we started in fall 2023. So we read the passage, we identify where we may get stuck, and then we translated the passage into English and we compared our translations. So this was a 100% human affair up until this point. So what's important here is that the students realized I used my Italian language skills to see what's difficult here. And then my knowledge or the lack of knowledge of certain parts of the language created the difficulty. So they knew what was difficult in translating that passage. Then step 2, we gave that same passage to AI tools. So we did to Google Translate, Bard at the time, that's now Gemini, and then ChatGPT, it was, I think, 3.5, the free version at that point. And so they compared the 3 outputs. And so you see, I gave them some questions to reflect upon in group. How did they do with the challenges? What did in general the tools do well and what did they struggle with? So really kind of take it a higher level. And then I asked them, so what do you think is the best translation and why? And so the interesting thing was that there was no consensus. So I had a vote, at least one vote for all the 3 translations. So the students were not in agreement that one tool was better, and they saw that all of them had difficulties, similar difficulties than humans had. So no of the AI tools nailed the translation. So there were still some issues. And again, they saw their understanding of what's tricky in this helped them evaluate the worth of the quality of the translation. If an Italian 101 students put in the passage and hands it in, they don't have the tools yet, the skills yet to evaluate how good a translation it was. And so it was really helping them see that they had to do that work of evaluation. So this is, if you're just curious, this is what the outputs, I included that. You see the bullet points that Sissel mentioned, so that's always a giveaway when you have ChatGPT and Bard in the room. But then we got to the important part, and then we, with this knowledge about how these tools work, how can we develop a policy together? We looked at the academic integrity statement on the syllabus, which I'll show quickly in the next slide, and then you see the questions. How does the use of AI fit in here? How does the use of AI tools constitute academic dishonesty? And what do you consider fair use? So again, this was a conversation in groups and then as a class. And here you have that policy that refers back to the CUNY Academic Integrity Statement. And that's where we landed. So we as a class, and it really, we will not copy paste the output of AI generated translations and submit them as our own. We consider fair use to use all these resources to translate single words, short phrases, check for minor mistakes, and use these tools as the starting point of our work. And this is how we had in 3 quick steps, the development of an AI policy. I've left out, like on my syllabus, there was a blank space. And then once we had it in place, I copy pasted this, and this is what we used for the semester. So this concludes, I'll